Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Psychic Medium Raymond Guzman, and today I'm going to be doing a celebrity psychic reading on Jenni Rivera. This has been a very anticipated and very much requested video to be done on the cause, of the reasons behind her death, and I think a lot of her fans and family may still have questions about what really happened here. Um, about Jenni. And for those of you that are not aware who Jenni is, Jenni was a very famous Mexican singer in here in the U.S. and also in Mexico and other parts of the world for her norteña type of music. Again, in Latin American culture, there's different types of, genres, just like it is here in the U.S. For the English industry, music industry. So, she was a beautiful lady, and she had a beautiful heart, and a gorgeous voice, one that was very strong and very powerful. And her songs typically would pull at your emotion strings. They were songs, that were about love and her, based a lot on her life as well. She was a songwriter as well, and an entrepreneur. She had her own businesses that she was operating as well prior to her death. So I'm just giving you a little bit of background for those of you that are not aware of who she is and how she died. She did die in a plane crash on December 9th, 2012. And a lot of her fans and family and everybody that, adored her have mourned the death, and have a lot of people have felt unsettled in the reasons behind the plane crash and, what really happened here. So I'm going to go ahead and give you what I see from a psychic perspective, from a mediumship perspective, what I get from her soul and from what she's wanting to say, what, spirit is wanting to say, and what is being revealed. Jenni was a very much a likable person, someone that was liked by a lot of people, but in the industry that she was in, her songs were a lot directed towards men and the mistreatment of women, how men mistreated women. So a lot of her songs like took jabs at men, in many ways, standing up, and saying, it's not right. This was not right to be treated this way, etc. In the industry itself, I do feel like she did have a lot of enemies, even though, she's a good person. You would think, why would she have a lot of enemies? Well, because first of all, she was rising to fame, um, and she worked very hard to get there. It wasn't something that was overnight. It was progressively, she made her name for herself. And she did it, through hard work. And a lot of people will say, well, her father was already in the music industry, so her family, had some kind of pull, but there was no favoritism. And I think that's something that a lot of people are not getting, or they wouldn't get. I don't feel like there was favoritism when it came to Jenni. She was treated just like anyone else and given that same kind of you know expectations that all the other artists would have. I do feel like Jenni was very intuitive herself, and she could see through people, fakery, people that were fake in the industry and that she didn't like, and she wouldn't align herself with them, and she was not one to bite her tongue either. So she let people know. There's a lot of I feel like confrontations that she would have had with females and males, and letting them know, that she wasn't a pushover and she wasn't going to be fake like them and fake something that she's not, that she wasn't somebody that was fake. She kept it real. And I feel like when it came to her family, she was the mama bear, and she was very protective of her children, and she tried to do the best that she could. She's saying, when she was here in the physical world, to really provide for her children and give them, what they needed, even if some other people, around that were judging her or looking from the outside in and seeing, how her children were, raised. She says that she treated them and taught them that the value of money from very early on. So I don't feel like she pampered them or spoiled them. Yes, to a certain point, she would gift them things, and they were allowed, to have like an allowance, or she would give them things, but for the most part, what I'm getting from her is that she was someone who really knew the value of money, and she knew that, nothing, if her children were not going to work hard and learn for themselves, they would never learn. I do feel like she did see a lot and have to put out a lot of fires, things that happened within the family, abuse and other things that would have happened within the family itself, other family members like females, injustice. That's what's coming across through from her soul. So I do feel like in many ways she was like the caretaker of her family, and someone that, stood her ground and protected, all the children and other people. And she would have confronted people. She wouldn't have like backed down. And I think that's where a lot of men had problems, because when they come across a strong woman like Jenni was, it's something that is kind of intimidating. And I feel like she had, for being a small lady, because she was fairly petite and short, you would think that, somebody like that would not have, would be afraid, or, people would be afraid of her. But I feel like, I mean, they wouldn't be afraid of her, but I feel like they were in many cases, because she had that fiery spirit, and her soul was so strong and very passionate about doing what was right in this world. And I feel like she did fall into depression. She did have some depressive states. I do feel like a lot of her relationships fell through for many reasons. I feel like the men that she would attract to herself, were men that were usually lower vibration, men that had a lot of baggage, didn't have really a clear perspective. For them, it was more platonic. I feel like it was more sexual than anything, because they found her very attractive. But I feel like at the most part, that this is something that didn't bring her ultimately happiness in many ways. She learned a lot of lessons that were valuable in every relationship that she was in, and it helped her soul grow here in the physical world. And I think what she's trying to say, the message right now for a lot of females out there, because she's addressing this mainly to the females out there, the young women that were her fans, and that are still fans and that still listen, and even her daughters, to not let any man mistreat you, and to stand your ground, even if, it means you having to go through some struggles, but know your worth in everything that you do. And that's the message that I'm getting from her soul, is to never compromise your integrity, never to compromise who you are, and to always love your family, and to take care of them. But also, don't let, she's saying again, don't let any man, you know, take advantage of you, and to protect your heart in many ways. That's the kind of message that I'm getting. And I do get that she's wanting to let her oldest daughter know, Cheekies, I believe that's her name. I don't know if she's the oldest, but I get her name would be Cheekies, I believe. That she loves her very much, and she thanks her for kind of taking up and stepping up, and taking ownership of a lot of the businesses, and overseeing things. And she knows that she talks to her, and she misses her, and she does look at her photograph, and she is there with her. And I feel like Cheekies has some kind of jewelry that she wears, or something of her mom's, that reminds her of her, and her soul is there with her and guiding her from the other side. And Jenni, the way that she comes across when I'm channeling her soul is someone that was very strong, not a weak energy at all, very strong, very eccentric in many ways. And she's saying how she loved her hair, she loved the costumes and all of that. But that wasn't the real her. She's saying, when she didn't have all that, it was just her hair pulled back in a ponytail and a baseball cap, or just pulled back in tennis shoes and blue jeans. And that was her, that was Jenni. But the persona that she had, she loved the music, she says, and she loved the stage, and she loved, singing out to the people. And she keeps showing me something that she would have been given, like a book. So I don't know if the family still has like a book that one of her fans would have done in memory of her. Well, not in memory of her, but before her passing. This would have been like a book or something that would have been given of her. It would have had images of her and messages of love, that they loved her and appreciated her. And that is what I'm getting here. When it came to her relationships, a lot of the men, like I said, I'm going to go back to that. They were very controlling. I feel like they kind of were very, one of them, or at least some of them, they were kind of, wanting to get money the fast way and an easy way, and it was dirty in many ways. I also feel like she was very much in the spotlight of many men that may have been involved with dealings that were kind of like, whether they were the cartel or drugs, stuff like that in that nature. She would have been involved in. I feel like a lot of the men had secrets and they were maybe cheating on her as well. So there was a lot of things that were involved here. But I also feel like Jenny also had her eye on different people as well. Because like I said, she was pushed in the spotlight once, her career started taking off really well. Closer to her passing, she would have been like 3 to 4 years before her passing. She would have been in a spotlight, and a lot of men would have been coming towards her and expressing that. But I do get there was a big argument between her and her husband, the last husband that she had, which was Esteban Loaza, or I can't pronounce the last name. Maybe that I said it right, Loaza. But anyways, he was, I believe, a baseball player in Mexico, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I see a lot of secrets around the her relationships, the men being very secretive, being very manipulative, and almost enjoying the success. I feel like some of them actually got with her not so much for love, but because they wanted to kind of climb the social ladder, being that she was someone that was already gaining popularity and notoriety, in the music industry. Um, but I do feel like she was very lonely in many ways. She knew more or less what they were doing, and that they were manipulating her, and she says that in many ways there was something legal going on uh, with one of these guys. So uh, I feel like if not all of them, they all had some kind of legal issues in the past. But I just keep seeing a lot of legal things. I also feel like she had to fight in many ways. None of these relationships came without a price. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of arguments, a lot of just a lot of unrest. And she's saying in her career, it wasn't like everybody thinks, that it's so easy and it comes so easy. That basically there's a lot of judgment that goes through, that you have to go through. Um, and I feel like in many ways she's saying that she was judged in many ways by a lot of people in the industry, whether it was her weight, whether it was her height, or because of the music that she sang. Typically a lot of that music was sung by men, because like I said, the norteño world is kind of more male dominated in some ways. So I feel like a lot of the men did welcome her, but a lot of them also didn't like the fact that she was becoming more popular than they are. And that's just an ego issue with the males. And her brother Lupillo, she loves him dearly as well. And I feel like he also felt some of that judgment after her passing, and even before the passing. Like other guys would blame him for, kind of sticking up for his sister, in many ways. So I get that as well, coming through. So he would have, been through some kind of emotional depression as well. I feel like all the family has gone through some depression, and they're trying to come out of this in many ways. The home life, she's showing me there was a lot of sadness. There was a lot of things going on towards the last couple of months right before her passing. Um, she's saying that she feels like in some cases, that she didn't get to spend a lot of time with the children. It was constantly going, flying, doing concerts and stuff like that. So she just wants all the children to know that she is there with them. Uh, that her soul is there and watching over them, and even if she didn't get to spend time with them, she is sorry for that. That she didn't get to spend the quality mom and children, bonding time towards the end of her life. Because again, there was a lot of things going on in the family, and I feel like she knows, like, it was almost like what's coming through is like the daughters were quarreling amongst each other. And maybe with Jenny, there would have been some arguments back and forth, and she says she forgives them, that she doesn't want them to hold on to those things, whatever was said, prior to her passing, because I do feel like there were some strong discussions. Because like I said, Jenny was someone that would not have bit her tongue. She would have said what she needed to say, and it would have gotten it off her chest. Again, it was tough love that she would have shown to her children to set them on the right course. And so she just wants them to know, and her son, to know that she does love them, and for them to know that it's going to be okay. Uh, what I'm also getting here from all of this is that about her death, that moments leading up to that, I feel like she went to Mexico. She was, doing what she needed to do there. But I feel that there was foul play, and I will say this again, there was foul play, and I get there was a male involved. He would have been Hispanic. He would have been someone that did not like Jenni in many ways. And I feel like it was due to like a retaliation. What's very interesting is that her husband, well, I would say her, ex-husband, well, she was still married to him before, but Esteban Loaiza, on August 2018, he is supposedly, going to be sentenced either 10 years to life in prison due to drug charges, federal drug charges, something like that. What's interesting is that Jenni filed for divorce papers on October the 1st, 2012, and she died on December the 9th, 2012, and she was still married to Esteban Loaiza. So what's very interesting is that after she filed the divorce papers that she dies, and being that, like I said, there could have been some involvement in a big drug ring, what I'm getting visions of is that the plane was actually sabotaged. There was something that was that they took apart out to or broke apart of the plane so that it would not be functioning correctly, and upon reaching a certain altitude in the air, it would lose control and it would crash, and that would be the end of her. I don't think that it was something where it was avoidable. Whoever did it, I feel like it was a group of two people, two men that would have sabotaged the plane, but then there was one man that was calling the orders, and he had some kind of connections and pulls to people there in Mexico. And the dynamic and the security there in Mexico is a lot different than here in the USA, where her plane crashed. Again, that's just what I'm getting from her soul and from her spirit. So the moments, I think a lot of people, her family would like to know, in the moments leading up to her passing, what exactly did she experience? Was there pain? I feel like it was just like you fall asleep and you transition and you're out of your body and you transition to spirit. And in many ways, I feel like she was greeted by her guardian angels and carried into the light. So I don't feel like this was something where she suffered, or felt a lot of pain. It was instantaneous, like an impact upon an impact and crash. I just feel like she would have, transitioned. Because I know there was a lot of horrendous pictures that were published. No respect towards the family. They published pictures of pieces of her hair and, toes, pieces of the body, of the limbs, which I've seen those photographs, and it was just repulsive to see that somebody would be so cruel to publish those photos, but they do it with a lot of celebrities out there. But when I tune into Jenni's soul, and how this all happened, I feel like she knew more or less that her life was always a dangerous type of lifestyle that she lived. Not that she knew that she was going to go this way, but I feel like she was making preparations for things. She always kind of thought ahead, and in many ways I feel like Chiquis and the other daughters and the son, and her family, they would have known and more, or now upon reflection, I feel like they've reached out to maybe some people as well, some spiritual people for readings or whatnot. But I feel like they would have, kind of come to the conclusion or had the idea as well, like a premonition that something was going to happen. They were being prepared. I feel like she prepared them. Her soul was fully aware, more or less, in advance of what was going to happen before it happened. And I feel like, that's why she was so tough on her children, and she was so tough on Chiquis, and wanting to set them right and let them know, because she knew more or less that her soul, like we all, when we come into the physical world, regardless if we are murdered or we are going through, we go through a suicide or we, go through a disease, In many ways, the soul is already, it's written into our contract, and we have different, our soul contract, and we have different exit points. And in many ways, we, know more or less when or what's going to happen. It's all like detailed out. And I feel like in many ways that her soul was prepared. So this wasn't like a surprise to her now that she's on the other side. But she is okay, like I said, in music. I feel like there's many people that are being influenced by her, and the music that she's done and continues. And I feel like her children are going to, as they grow, continue to live her legacy out, and maybe go into the music industry already, put out albums. I feel like Chiquis, is very musically inclined, and some of the other, family members. And yeah, I do feel like, the justice is being served, for the responsible parties now. Again, I'm not saying who would have carried this out, the plans to sabotage her plane, but again, it was foul play. And I think a lot of people, a lot of fans and her family even feel that way as well, that it wasn't normal for a plane just to crash. Why not any other, plane or jet, or, why was it her aircraft that crashed? So I want to thank you so much for allowing me to do this reading. I send big angel hugs out to her family, to her fans of Jenni Rivera, and blessings and love and light. Thank you so much.